Hello. Welcome to Spilling the Loyalty, a Digitas podcast. And I am your co-host, Melissa Berger, Chief Solutions Officer at Digitas. And my usual co-host, Amy Landsey, unfortunately is not able to join us today, but I'm excited to have our amazing special guest here today. We are going to talk a little bit about loyalty, brand media, and really thinking about kind of the products on the shelf and what that means. So, Kelly, I'd love for you to say hello, introduce yourself, and talk a little bit about your role.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm Kelly Kavanagh. I lead the U.S. Integrated Marketing and Media team at Haleon. Not everybody knows the name Haleon. We're 3 years young in many ways, but we have a long-standing portfolio of brands that we're really proud to have carried on from legacy companies before us. Brands such as Sensodyne, Tums, Advil, Robitussin, Centrum, Theraflu, Emergency. We have a great portfolio that I am honored and really happy to be continuing to carry on their branding. I've been at the company 19 years.
19 years.
Yeah. So it's been, and obviously been in the media industry even longer. So it's been super fun to see how this industry changes and trying to keep up with the times and help drive it forward with partners like you guys.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure for our listeners, all those brands you mentioned, you're like, yep, check. And probably to your point, don't all know that they are part of Haleon.
Yeah.
So when I first started working on your business, I actually did a house check. And I was proud to say that we had a lot of your products.
Your own house, I mean. I thought you were breaking into others. Okay.
Yeah, I do like to break into other people's houses as well, especially my mother's. But no, we went around. I was like, look at us. Accidentally, we're doing very good because they are such staples to people's lives, their wellness and health and how they think about kind of like doing better. So I love that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what we wanted to talk today is the consumer health space, which is ever changing. It's important to all of us. And I think, it's not just about what's inside the bottle. It's really thinking about kind of the connectivity of the brand. And I know some of our conversations have been around how do we get people who love Sensodyne to buy some of your other products if they're not in consideration today, which is interesting. So we've talked a lot about at Digitas, like brands earning kind of a consumer's mind and their heart and their wallet as it relates to the product. So when we think about kind of earning its place in consumers' lives, how have you thought about that, especially in a very big role at Haleon running what you lead there? So how do you think about that and becoming a household staple?
Yeah, I mean, it's no small task, especially because there's a lot of great competitors and brands and solutions for our consumers in the categories that we play in. But the reality is we always have to start with the consumer. We really try to be disciplined about not starting with the brand and who we think we want to be and how we think it makes sense, and let's force fit it and kind of encourage the consumer. But where is the consumer need? What experiences are they going through? What's going on with their daily lives? And it's really interesting to see all the different types of segments and needs that our different consumers have. And we've been really trying to think not only at the brand specific level and in the categories in which they play and the services and support they give. Advil helping support pain solutions, Centrum for everyday immunity and vitality. But really think at the enterprise level, because to your point, while it sounds like your house check showed a number of products in your house, I think it's only a little over half of consumers actually have two or more of our products in the house. Yeah. So we have a decent household penetration in total. Yep. But there's really a huge opportunity to say, hey, if you trust and like this brand from Haleon, we have a whole other breadth of brands and products that can help support you in your health and wellness needs. So starting with the consumer, what's going on in their daily lives? What's going on with their medical coverage, and how are they seeking solutions and trying to maintain their health? We're really interested in supporting consumers that have maybe not as much access to medical and healthcare, and that's really that's the gift and the benefit that we really like to recognize that we have with our portfolio of brands is we're on the shelves. Yep. So, and we're online that can easily be ordered from people. So you don't have to go to the doctor for our products. And it is a first point of solution for a lot of consumers who don't necessarily have those means and that access.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we show up in the right way and that we show what our brands stand for and what they can service and support, and then deliver what we say we're going to deliver with our claims and our positioning to our consumers.
Absolutely. I love that. At the end of the day, you're right. Not everybody has easy access to medical care and healthcare. So at least, from a Haleon perspective, you're able to provide some of that support for their body and their wellness. That's a really interesting thing that I think a lot of people, and even in our marketing world, you don't really think about the impact of our products on some consumers out there. So that's actually perfect kind of segue into thinking about kind of like storytelling and really the importance of like how and where you tell the brand story. So you started getting into this a little bit, but as we think about someone who's an avid Advil fan, right? They're always having it in the house. They're talking about it. They're using it. How are you thinking about telling like that larger story of your other products?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we really try to do. I mean, Advil, we're really excited. We have a new campaign out. It's, no pain, more gain.
I love it.
So there's just all this, we don't want our pain to stop us, right? As we're getting older, we're feeling a little bit more nicks and cricks, but there's this energy and this enthusiasm that we all still have, and this vitality to keep doing what we want to be doing and to keep doing what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
So there's just a need to make sure that we're, showing up in the right places and showing up to consumers where it makes sense to them. And then also, but I should say we have this wide variety of brands that we feel like play in different categories and different need states, but ultimately there are some very overlapping and consistent consumers that make a lot of sense and that have our there's the immediacy of brands. If people aren't really feeling like they're they might be starting to feel like the season's coming and they want to stay healthy and get through the season. So we have vitamins and supplements. And there's just, if you're feeling just a little bit off and you have that fever you feel like is running up, you can certainly take some pain meds to help in Advil like that to alleviate it. So there are opportunities that we see. Largely, we've been doing historically a lot of campaigns and programs with our retail partners, what we call like scale or multi-brand programs. But more and more, we're seeing the opportunity to tell our portfolio brand stories to different consumer segments and audiences that we recognize as making a lot of sense. We're really proud that we're U.S. Soccer Federation sponsors.
Incredible.
Huge soccer fans. World Cup is coming. It's going to be huge. And we really did a lot of work when we started the conversations with the U.S. Soccer Federation. And we were just so aligned. And, our motto and mantra at Haleon is we want to bring everyday health with humanity to people. And there's such a great, soccer is like down from your 3-year-old nephews playing soccer and nieces all the way up to the super fans, well into their, my father-in-law used to, when it used to only be available on satellite, go to the bars to watch the Irish teams play. So there's just a huge passion base there, but also a real need and opportunity. Everybody needs our products and everybody enjoys that sport.
Yeah. I love that. And, I am a soccer player. I was not anymore, let's be honest. But when I was a younger lady, so I loved when that announcement came out and sponsorship. And to your point, like that's a great way to tell the brand story through the lens of these incredible athletes who we watch them run around the fields, get pushed around, falling down, running around. I have a million injuries. That's why I don't play soccer anymore. And to your point, Advil, vitamins, thinking about being healthier and supporting that, and who better to help tell that story? Amazing female athletes.
Yeah, female athletes, male athletes, and just the fans. That's a really exciting thing about soccer. It really brings so many people together, whether we're supporting the same team or not. There's the
passion,
the fandom, and just the families coming together, and the different audience and underserviced populations and ethnic populations that have these fan bases in the U.S. It really gives us an opportunity to make sure that if consumer segments and people aren't as familiar with our brands, there's an opportunity to do so through these different outlets where we know soccer is really important to certain communities. Absolutely. How can we introduce our brands to those communities in a way that's really relevant and exciting and means something to them?
Yeah. I love it. I also, exciting the World Cup is coming and participated in a FIFA session earlier this year. And, so much hype and talk about this being the biggest World Cup ever.
Yes.
The passion for the sport and for the teams and just like country passion is, at its highest. So I'm thrilled and I'm going to be really excited to see Haleon kind of woven throughout.
Yeah, we've been starting to do some activations and it's just fun. If you weren't like a huge fan, you can't help but become one because there's just so much energy and they're just a great organization to work with. So it's been great.
Yeah, I love that so much. So I think when you're creating these different connections, we talked a little bit about this. I feel like, again, what you just talked about with leveraging the U.S. Soccer Federation and your sponsorship there, that's a great way for people to think beyond just kind of the shelf and going into a store and putting it in their basket, truly like weaving it into their lives. So I think it's a really interesting way that you guys are telling the story. Are there certain, as you think about, whether it's the World Cup and areas where, you want to think about what some of those bigger activations are. So what are you kind of thinking about as surrounding that experience?
So the soccer activation in particular, I mean, there's obviously different ways that people consume soccer pieces. So there's the games themselves. So showing up with obviously our broadcast activity and our campaigns across our portfolio, also bringing together a campaign for our portfolio of brands. But then just like every other, media experience and consumer experience, I should say, with media that's happening now, it's so fragmented. So, and, I was joking with a friend who he's a cameraman on The Daily Show, and we were joking one time, and it was like, you have these shows that are the core and kind of the anchor for what you're doing from a program and content standpoint, but really the eyeballs now and the engagements are from pushing out and having all those pieces of content in so many different places. Yes. And the same goes for soccer.
Absolutely.
So it's showing up and being where, you're consuming the game, but then also what are the pieces and the content that we're aligning with and sponsoring and showing up with, from social, audio, like what are all the different components where we're really showing up where consumers are just trying to get the latest updates. And you know how it is. We're not just into the games and we really want to follow the players and understand a little bit more about them. And people just love sports so much, and they love it because of the athleticism and the competitiveness of it, because I think athletes and are becoming that much more relatable and connected, and showing kind of the other side to them, much like a lot of creators are in the business now. And then there's the on-site events. We can get the fans that are viewing from home, but there's also a lot of activity and things that we're really excited to bring to the actual games. Yeah.
Well, we're excited, obviously. I think both of us have games that are going to be in our local cities, which is exciting.
Exactly.
It's interesting. We've been doing some digging into kind of like Gen Z around the upcoming Olympics as well, right? So a couple of years away. But it's interesting because, to your point, there's a lot about following the athletes. And I didn't think about this until someone pointed it out. This is, especially for Gen Zs, a lot of the Olympians are Gen Zs.
Yeah.
And so there's just a tighter connection. So we've been thinking about this, the storytelling and the importance of kind of like brand and demand, performance and, brand love and kind of the mix of those. So I'm really excited to see all the things that you all do around the World Cup.
Yeah, you can look at athletes as creators and influencers in many ways. And it's so interesting to think about how celebrities were so such a reach, right? There was this aspirational piece. And now it's, I have teenagers and they're like, oh my God, I saw that my influencer, she's at the beach today. Can we go and see if we could find it? There's so much more reachable in ways. And I think that's a really interesting thing about celebrity in general, but then also just the connectivity that this new kind of content stream of creator partnerships is creating for brands like ours too.
Yeah, I think you're right. More open, more accessible, and I think just transparent too. Which I think, it's actually I want to talk a little bit about kind of trust and really thinking about what that means for products like yours. So when you think about trust, again, as a core tenet of people continuing to buy your products, how do you think about kind of overarchingly kind of consumer health brands, but even how Haleon's working to kind of earn that trust?
Yeah. It's funny. I'll stay on the kids topic. There's this saying, you want to know a kid's future, look at the friends that they're hanging out with now. And you can say the same thing about brands.
Yeah.
So it's really important that if we know who we want to be and what we want to stand for as a brand, that we're showing up in environments that help showcase that and don't discourage that. And obviously it's an interesting dynamic with so much of how we buy digital media now with programmatic, that you're not necessarily, choosing the exact location. But there's a lot of partners that really help us with this transparency and the brand suitability standards. It's like the, behind the scenes, set up the pipes right with the Double Verifies of the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But then there's also the bigger programs, right? The more in your face activations and adjacencies that we create, such as the U.S. Soccer Federation partnership. We're really proud of a Sensodyne content program we did with Vox and Digitas, which we sponsored a documentary called Sensory Overload, which really identified and followed communities of neurodiverse consumers and their experience having to go to the dentist and their fear and concern with going to the dentist. And there was this one amazing dentist who completely changed his whole practice around being accommodating to the neurodiverse population.
Amazing.
And with that, we also, and that was our Sensodyne activation. So we're really proud of that documentary. But we also, one of the things Haleon is really proud of is our expert connections and relationships. Some might say those, HCPs and dentists are the first creators and influencers, right? Before this whole industry kicked off. But, with that, we didn't just say, hey, push it out there. Isn't that an interesting story? We also, created training programs for dentists working with the ADA to make accredited hours available to dentists so that they too could be inspired by what's going on in some dental office and some dental communities to accommodate and welcome neurodiverse patients with as much welcoming and calm to make it less scary.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's really important with brands, especially the brands. We joke that this organization's only 3 years old, but these brands are really long-standing, really strong brands in the industry. And we have this finite period of time where we're responsible for carrying on that heritage and that equity for them. So choosing the right programs and knowing who we want to be to consumers and what consumers really need from our brands is critically important with the choices that we make.
Yeah, I love that. And you have done so many different kind of content pieces that we're lucky to be a part of. And I really enjoyed it. I think that Sensodyne one was really interesting. And again, it was not a forcing your product.
Yeah.
It was really about telling the story and the human behind it and the importance of, yes, a product in someone's life. But I loved that story about the dentist. Who loves going to the dentist? Not many people.
Right.
And whether you have, some other sensory things or not, it's just not always enjoyable. So it's really interesting, kind of going into that angle. I really enjoyed watching that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's still available on Hulu.
I know, exactly.
Hulu.
I know, exactly. All right. So when we think about kind of, as loyalty in this space, what advice would you give to other brands? I'm like, again, big L. So buying your product services, over anything else. What advice would you give in this rapidly changing landscape?
So, I think it's really critical to stand true to who your brand is. And don't forget, it can be very distracting to see the different kind of trends and what's going on. And it's like, don't forget who you are and what you stand for.
Yep.
But also recognize that your consumer is changing and evolving. So how does that kind of, and you can evolve your heritage and what your brand stands for in the right way. But, we can get very distracted with hype and things. So I think that's really important. And then I just think, and it's harder for our brands to build like loyalty programs per se, because how interested are people really in getting texts from Advil? Maybe they are. There probably are very passionate folks and there are people that need it.
Absolutely.
But, at the end of the day, there's different brands that I think kind of build different types of loyalty programs there. So I think it's like standing, showing and delivering what we say we're going to deliver. I think as a brand and a business is critically important, especially in the healthcare business.
Yeah, agree.
So driving that loyalty there. And then I think, as we're starting to evolve kind of our media mix and our marketing plans where, we can't ignore the agentic marketing dynamic that's going on. And that's what's really interesting is I sit through so many, I've, the opportunity to go to conferences and sit through other people. And it's like, everybody in these audiences, we're all marketers and we're all nodding our head. But how do we make sure the rest of the organization is learning and keeping up and recognizing? We get excited about the agentic marketing conversation. Our lawyers will probably go, oh my gosh, what do I need to be paying attention to now?
Right.
With a little bit of fear and hesitation, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing their job to be asking those questions.
Yeah.
But how do we get people comfortable with thinking about our media and our marketing mix a little differently? I have a paid media background. Yeah. And I am, also one of the big proponents in the organization with a few others on our experience team beating the drum around the importance of owned properties.
Yeah.
And, there was a great quote that I saw on LinkedIn about, right now the open web is becoming more of a data set than a destination. So it's really important that we have our owned properties and our social presence and all of the different feeds that we know are going to LLMs.
Absolutely.
Accurate.
Yep.
And updated and relevant to our consumers.
Yeah.
Because ultimately our consumers aren't necessarily going to be going to our brand.com, but what they're getting exposed to is being fed from those places.
Absolutely.
So it's staying aware of that, because there's often some pressures in terms of investments to make in the organization. And it seems like, oh, but nobody's going to the brand.com. Why do I need to invest? Because that data and information is feeding into where consumers are going to learn
exactly right.
and educate themselves.
I feel like Haleon was kind of ahead of the game around kind of trialing and thinking about agentic marketing usage just around like the synthetic audience, right? Yeah. And being able to quickly get some feedback from a persona, right? In that space, which is really interesting. And then we had the recent conversation around kind of AI search and the era of answers and how things are changing. So to your point, SEO, site content is almost even more important when you think about kind of what's changing in search. And recently I was speaking to someone who said, using AI to make certain things more efficient and easier is great, right? But at the end of the day, it's also how are we thinking about a consumer's behavior changing because of it? Yeah. So you might skip the whole first 3 parts of a typical consumer journey now. It all happened in 5 seconds on ChatGPT. So how are we thinking about that? So again, I feel like...
And it's trickier to track and monitor and figure out.
Absolutely.
I mean, all the different, the LLMs all have different data sources, and we're still trying to, is there accuracy and validity in what we think is feeding it. So it'll be really interesting to see how this market changes, because I think that there's just so much to be quantified and measured and validated in this new
and changing every day. I think that's yesterday, both Amy and I were on panels, but kind of back to back, which was funny, around some of the technology, AI, the speed of consumer, some of those pieces. And it's interesting to kind of talk about. Everyone has a little bit of a different perspective, but we're all kind of in the same situation of trialing, testing, seeing what makes the most difference, what's helpful for our clients, what's helpful for your consumers, and really kind of like that feedback loop or flywheel, frankly, of how we're thinking differently about it.
And the testing piece is always so interesting for years and years, right? Because it's like you see something happening and you want to test it, but then you test it too soon and it doesn't prove out. And then people are like, we tried that, it didn't work.
It didn't work.
So I think keeping a fresh eyes and an open perspective on, well, it might not have worked, but when is the tipping point that we feel like this will work, or what would have needed to be true for it to work? And let's monitor and make sure that if we're getting to that point, we do it again.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
that's good. I mean, I feel like you guys are a brand who are you're really willing to try and test things, which I love. And it puts you ahead of the curve. So it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, thank you for sharing your insights today. I'm so excited to, I appreciate you as a partner. I love being invited to all the Haleon events, and I was going to say,
love having you.
Well, thank you. And I was going to say, it is impressive to me, all the education and thought leadership you want to bring to your team. So everybody, it's easy to be in your everyday lives, doing your checklists and getting things done. But the fact that you're constantly saying, I want our teams to hear about what else is happening out there, what else is happening in other verticals. Yeah. So I will always come present to you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we will definitely have you back for it.
Yay. Okay, good. All right. So last question that we like to ask everybody, what brand can't you live without right now?
I would have to say, we were just talking about our makeup regime and how we're both low. I would have to say, I do love the CeraVe cleansing experience. I just, because I for years it was, and there's a rejuvenating skin gel specifically that I love. Okay. Because I don't know, there's so many creams that just don't do it for me. But that is something that I really,
also a big fan.
Also a big fan. And they're also really smart about how they do. I mean, they have great marketing and they have great expert marketing and how they bring in dermatologists to their story. It's so clever. But their marketing's great, but the products work. And that's what that's really what matters at the end of the day. You could have a great campaign that I love following, but if it's not going to deliver.
Exactly.
Thanks for
you always have it
trying.
Yes, exactly. It's in your toolkit always. So I love that. I love that. Well, thank you again for sharing your expertise and
super fun.
Of course. Thank you so much for doing it. And of course, for all of our loyal listeners, please follow us on Spotify. We love hearing, and if you have ideas, feel free to reach out. Again, loyalty for us isn't just about programs. It's really about all we do as marketers is helping people choose the brand that we think is going to be right for what they need. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.